Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name's Lisa Putri Maharani, class Mls-A from Group B. Today, I will try to explain what I understand about spoken discourse. Hopefully, it will be understandable. Happy watching. Thank you. English is included in the skill or skill category. There are even 4 skills that must be mastered in English, such as listening, speaking, reading, and writing. I will explain a little about speaking. Speaking is one of the skills that must be mastered and really must be able to be practiced in the field with other people in the world. In the educational system, learning English uses materials. The speaking will be taught by the teacher, and usually the teacher uses discussion or dialogue techniques as the first step in teaching, because language is our tool of communication. Spoken discourse is one of the most practical and common ways that language is used. You use spoken discourse every day to communicate information to your students, answer their questions, guide their discussion, or give direction. While the meaning of spoken discourse is an interactive speech between 2 or more people, which is a broad-based language phenomenon in daily life. Just as Cornbread and Carter say, speaking in everyday conversation usually takes place in real time. In conduct face-to-face is interactional. In linguistics, discourse has several branches of study, but they all work to study the context or units of language beyond a sentence and their use. Discourse studies how conversation form and are understood. Communicate more effectively by understanding a politeness and face looks, like a speaker adapt their talk in order to meet the needs and wants of the listener. Speaker use positive and negative face to applaud politely. Positive face if listener desires to be approved. Speaker use compliment, shows equality when speaking. Negative face if listener desire that their actions be unhindered. Speaker use apologize, indirect speech, and request. Every culture has different ideas of politeness. Discover what is polite in your student culture. If they age in a way that is impolite in classroom culture, speaking out of turn. For example, use it as Discourse teaching moment. Use specific and consistent direction to teach classroom culture. For example, guide students through cultural norms such as how to apologize, how to ask for more information, or how agree or disagree with a classmate. In a communication that uses a language, a person tends to have difficulty in distinguishing between spoken and written discourse. Spoken discourse certainly has a difference from written discourse because it tends to be accompanied by various factors, including non-language factors. So, spoken discourse tends to be a short and complete, then less grammatical, while written discourse usually complete and grammatical, full of information so that is not misunderstood by the reader. Usually, spoken discourse use informal language, then written discourse use standard language. Spoken discourse can be divided to types: dialogue discourse and monologue discourse. Dialogue discourse divided to types again: actual dialogue and text dialogue. Text dialogue can be carried out face to face when we having conversation on stage, and we can appear face to face if not spoken, only read out. Then actual dialogue is really dialogue and really conversation, spontaneous. The example of spoken discourse text that is spontaneous and unstructured. Grandma make me have to do. After school, I can't go anywhere. Afternoon, must rest. Afternoon, shower, keep studying. Ice snacks are not allowed either. Moreover, watching films. Don't get used to eating ice, said the grandmother. There are lots of snacks at home. On the examples are clearly and spontaneous. There are no language rules. And then, dialogue doesn't always mean conversation between two people, but also more than two persons. Therefore, dialogue is defined as two parties, speaker and listener. The definition of monologue discourse includes language, spoken or written speech, not included in the context in conversation, question and answer, drama or film subtitle, and other forms such as interview. The monologue discourse includes speech, teaching, telling stories, and so on. In the form of text can be letter, reading, and story. There are several characteristics in spoken discourse that we can be distinguished from written discourse. This characteristic is the sentence spoken discourse tends to be less structured in grammatical when compared to written discourse because it's spontaneous and direct. So the listener must process what someone said quickly and cannot be repeated. Spoken discourse also may confuse listener by people talking very widely, including fast, medium, and slow. The example, monologues on the radio can contain 160 words a minute, while conversation can be 220 words a minute. It seems faster or slower is the result of close pause when the speaker hears it. Usually, written discourse conveyed in sentence, while spoken discourse is conveyed in one clause and longer speech conversation. Then spoken discourse in the form of incomplete sentence, often only in praise. The praise is combination of two or more words that have meaning. Next, spoken discourse rarely use hyphens because it's supported by a context. Next, the speaker can change the structure or expand the expression that is less or even less practice. And then the speaker tends to use a general vocabulary. And even the speaker can use any of fillers. For example, I think you know if you know what I mean, and so on. After spoken discourse is spoken with many accents such as standard, regional, and native, and etc. What does that mean? Because there are many types or accents in English. For example, the accent is next. There are two ways in understanding oral discourse or spoken discourse, namely the bottom-up process and the top-down process. The bottom-up process refers to the use of incoming input as a basic for understanding message. Comprehension begins with data that has been received and is then analyzed as a sequential level of organization, including sounds, words, clause, sentence, text, until meaning arrive. Comprehension is seen as a decoding process. To understand this speech using bottom-up processing, we have to do it by breaking the speech down into its component. This is known as chunking. Are bits and bits that quite used to the core meaning that underlies speech. So, the point is, bottom-up processing is the strategy of obtaining information by examining the entirety of what the speaker conveys to listener from grammar, intonation, pronunciation, and etc. While top-down processing, where when the listener wants to get information, first the listener focuses attention towards the title or the topic, so that the listener has an idea or what the speaker informs. Okay, thank you for me, and then thank you for attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.